and we are now recording. So welcome everyone to another episode of the Sports Room here on UngarToTheMax, and I am your host, UngarToTheMax. Now, you know me to be a Cleveland Browns YouTuber, but what you might not know is that I am also a big-time hockey fan. Columbus Blue Jackets are my favorite team overall in the NHL. But as you can see, I have another favorite team, the St. Louis Blues, or I should say the 2019 Stanley Cup champion St. Louis Blues. However, I'm not the only hockey fan. So with me today is a special guest. I met him through Cleveland Sports Talk. Please welcome to the show my guest, Gregg. How do you say your last name? Senko?
That's right.
There we go. You want to introduce yourself a little bit?
So Gregg Senko. I also write for ClevelandSportsTalk.com. Big hockey fan, big Blue Jackets fan, as you can see behind me, and a Blackhawks fan as well. Got into hockey kind of by accident in I think it was 1991. Just when Sports Channel was still a thing, I kind of settled on that. I'm like, there's nothing else on tonight. And ended up watching the Sabres and the Islanders. And after that, there was no looking back. That became the catalyst for the sport to become like my favorite sport. So I love hockey. I've been to a Winter Classic, been to the Stanley Cup Finals, and been to the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto. Only thing I'm missing at this point is going to an All-Star game. Of course, with COVID and everything, who knows when that's coming back, but really appreciate you having me on today and talking some hockey.
Yeah. So you said you've been to the Stanley Cup Final. Which game did you go to?
I was at Game 5 of the 2018 Finals between Washington and Vegas, and that happened to be the game that Washington won the Cup, and it was like an experience like no other. I mean, there was hockey history sitting behind me. Manon Rhéaume, who was the first woman to ever play in the NHL, she was behind me. And then Willie O'Ree, who was the first Black man to ever play in the NHL. And actually yesterday was his day in the NHL. So they honored him. But and then seeing the cup come out, I mean, I wanted Vegas to win. But the fact that Washington won, and watching Gary Bettman, the commissioner, come out and do his speech, and actually watching the cup be presented, and it was just absolutely surreal after years of seeing it on television and now being there in person. It was an experience like no other.
Yeah. I have not been to a Stanley Cup Final game yet. Haven't even been to a Stanley Cup playoff game yet. But I've been to 2 Blue Jackets games. I've been to a Toronto Maple Leafs game. And my first NHL game ever actually was a Tampa Bay Lightning game. And I've also been to a Florida Panthers game. I forgot. That was actually the first time I saw the home team win, was when I went to the Panthers game, because both the Lightning and the Maple Leafs lost at home. And the funny part was, Tampa Bay lost to Vancouver and Toronto lost to Minnesota. So both Eastern Conference home teams lost to Western Conference opponents. Kind of coincidental.
Yeah.
But it was crazy, actually. When I went to the Blue Jackets game for the first time against the Toronto Maple Leafs, it was the day right before the game between Michigan and Ohio State. So obviously the energy was jacked up, but we sat right behind a row of Maple Leaf fans. And I'm like, this is nationwide. Why is there like a row of Maple Leaf fans like right in front of us? And I'm like, oh wait, it's Toronto. They travel strong wherever they go.
Yeah, they're dedicated fans. And actually, as much as I hate the team, Pittsburgh fans are pretty dedicated as well. I used to live in Florida for a bit, went to a few Lightning games, and one of them, they were playing the Penguins, and not an exaggeration, there were more Penguins fans there than there were Lightning fans. But I mean, I guess it's kind of typical. Florida fans don't really support Florida teams, so is what it is. But yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Yep.
So Greg and I have had this discussion going for a while. We even wrote an article about it for Cleveland Sports Talk. Maybe once we're done with this video, I'll include a link to that article in this post. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'll include a link to this article in the description. But we discussed the idea of whether or not Cleveland should be at least in consideration for getting an NHL team. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, right now Cleveland has a minor league team, the Cleveland Monsters, of which I would say I'm the biggest fan in Cleveland sports talk, but that's just me. But I've brought up the idea of maybe Cleveland should have an NHL team, and Greg was right there to say, no, they shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, it won't happen anytime in the foreseeable future, and by foreseeable,
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Seattle's getting the 32nd team in the league starting next season, barring any more issues with COVID and so forth. But they're scheduled to start next season, and I don't see the NHL going beyond 32 teams. You start significantly watering down the talent at that point. That aside, the problem with this, you've got Columbus just down the road, 2.5 hours away, right? So
yeah,
the league is not going to, as the old saying goes, rob from Peter to pay Paul. They don't want to, number one, steal from that fan base. And Columbus is already a small market team in the league. And there are, I don't know the exact figures, it's roughly 800 some thousand people that live in Columbus. You've got about 250,000 people that live in the Cleveland area. So if Columbus is a small market at almost 4 times the population that Cleveland is, Cleveland certainly wouldn't get a team. Plus you've got Pittsburgh. It's a little further away than Columbus, but Pittsburgh's still, not that far away. And
Detroit and also Chicago.
Right. You've got Chicago, which is like what, 5-6 hours away, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's different if you're like, Chicago has an AHL team and an NHL team. So they've got the population and the fanaticism to support all that. Before Seattle was awarded an NHL team, they were seriously looking at 2 teams. You've got the Maple Leafs, of course, in Toronto, and then Hamilton, Ontario, was looking at getting awarded an NHL franchise, which Hamilton isn't all that far away from Toronto. So, and there were a lot of people upset with that, like, hey, especially the Maple Leafs, you're going to pull from our fan base. So that's a whole issue too.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. If Cleveland was awarded an NHL team, I would be right there buying all the merchandise, going to the games, rooting for them like no other. But the reality is it's simply not going to happen.
Right. I'm not trying to say that Cleveland should get an NHL team. I'm not I'm not advocating for that necessarily. I just thought it was an interesting, idea to bring up. But the Monsters, when I go to their games a lot, like I just became a partial season ticket holder for them. I chose quite the season to do that.
Yeah. Who knew?
But typically, when I go to the games, you'll see Monsters fans, obviously, and there'll be some fans rooting for the away team, whoever it is. But then there's always a group of fans that will dress in like just NHL stuff. Like I've seen people in San Jose Sharks jerseys and Boston Bruins jerseys. God, I hate the Bruins more than any other team in the NHL. which my hatred for the Bruins only went up after they eliminated the Blue Jackets in 2019.
Sure, agreed.
Thankfully, my Western Conference team beat them in the Stanley Cup final, so that was a bit of revenge for me. Which, by the way, I don't know the exact history, but the Blues actually would not be a team in the NHL had it not been for the Chicago Blackhawks. I don't know if you know the history of that or not, but there was like some old arena in St. Louis called like the Checker Dome. And I don't remember all the full details off the top of my head, but it was like the owner of the Blackhawks like had stake in it in that arena for some reason. I'm not totally clear on the details, but to get it off their hands, they're like, okay, St. Louis can have a team. Thus, the Blues came into existence. I'll try to figure out more of the history on that and send it over to you.
All right.
But, so I guess that's part of the reason why I thought of the idea of Cleveland having an NHL team, because like you always see a bunch of like fans that are just wearing general NHL stuff. Like, you know, like I said, you might see somebody in a Sharks jersey or a Boston Bruins jersey. Hey, I might even show up to a Monsters game wearing a bunch of St. Louis Blues stuff. You know.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I get it. I mean, people, they may not own Monster stuff. And I mean, hey, there's a good place to buy it. You're in the right location to do that and
Right.
support the team. But yeah, it's like I'll go and my dad will have a Sabres jersey on or something, yeah, I mean, the Monsters, it's great hockey too. I think what a lot of people don't understand, it's like that's minor league, but that is one step away from the NHL. That's the equivalent of AAA in baseball.
Correct.
And there is a lot of talent in that league. You've got Kivlenix, the Monsters starting goalie. I mean, he's right now the Blue Jackets have arguably the best goalie tandem in the NHL. But Kivlenix is right there to step up should one of those guys go down or something like that.
Right.
And this is another interesting thing. Who knows what's going to happen with the Monsters this season? Now, as you mentioned, it's American Hockey League, minor league. That league is totally gate driven. And for folks out there that aren't familiar with what that means, the NHL is not totally gate driven. So they get a lot of money off of TV revenue. The AHL gets nothing off of that. They rely solely on people going through those gates, buying tickets and merchandise and so forth at the games. So the AHL previously mentioned February 5th, they're going to start their season. And as somebody mentioned today on Cleveland Sports Talk, it's kind of ironic that we're that close to the start date and there has been no schedule released yet.
That was probably me that said that.
Okay. Yeah, so it is curious. I don't know how they're going to do this. I don't know if they're hoping like, hey, if we can get 1,000 people in an arena, it's better than nothing. I know Gary Bettman, I don't know him personally, but I know Gary Bettman, the commissioner of the NHL, he said before this NHL season started a few weeks ago that they're losing billions and they would actually lose less money if they had no season at all.
Right.
So it's a very scary situation. I mean, just like you, it's like hockey is my favorite sport. But the reality is the NHL, of the big four leagues in North America, the NHL is the lowest ratings, lowest income of them all.
Yeah.
So, it's hard for them to gain ground. And this certainly does not help their cause. So I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. So much like what the NHL did by realigning their divisions, the AHL did the same thing. So the Monsters are not in the North Division like they typically are. Instead, they're in the Central Division. And
the Metropolitan.
No, I'm talking about the Monsters.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. the Blue Jackets are typically in the Metropolitan Division.
Right.
But typically the Monsters are in the North Division, but this year they're in the Central Division. And they'll be playing against the Texas Stars, affiliate of the Dallas Stars, Grand Rapids Griffins, Chicago Wolves, who are now the affiliate of the Carolina Hurricanes, which makes no sense. The Iowa Wild, and I believe that's it. Oh, and the Rockford Ice Hogs, affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks, coincidentally enough.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like that if a schedule gets released at some point, it's going to be just like the NHL where they're playing division-only games, which as a newly minted season ticket holder and just a fan in general, it's a little bit disappointing because I wanted to see the Monsters play teams like Hershey, Charlotte, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, especially the Penguins, actually, because this might pain you a little bit, but the Blue Jackets are my number 1 team in the Metropolitan Division, but my number 2 team, the Pittsburgh Penguins. I'm sorry. Sidney Crosby's not my favorite player. Jake Gensel is. I will say that.
All right.
It just bothers me, though, that we're doing these division-only games. Because if you look at the NBA, they're doing a regular schedule. Like, every team's playing each other. Now, I get it. The NHL only has the NBA only has one Canadian-based team, the Toronto Raptors.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot easier to, pick up a team and move them to somewhere else temporarily. Like the Raptors are playing in Tampa Bay. You're not going to do that with 7 Canadian teams. So I like that they gave the Canadian teams their own division. I just don't understand why, for the rest of the teams, why did the rest of the teams have to, I guess, suffer in that sense and play division-based games?
Well, I think you prove that point right there in that, like, the AHL and the NHL have such a significant number of Canadian teams, and Canada's government has handled the COVID-19 situation differently than the US has. And not to go down a road of politics or anything, but there's been, like, you've got 50 states here, and whereas, like, the handful of provinces in Canada, it's pretty much all handled the same way up there. Whereas here, you've got a state like Florida that's like, hey, do what you want to do, go wherever you want to go. And then you've got a state like California where it's like, it is a hard lockdown. So with that being said, the Canada teams are not going to be able to travel. So it made sense, like, when the NHL took those teams and were like, okay, you guys are all in one division.
Right.
You're not going to be able to travel and cross the border.
Correct.
So now when playoffs comes, that's going to be an interesting situation because some of those teams from that Canadian division are going to advance to the playoffs. Do you do a bubble at that point and everybody goes to Canada? How do you do that? Right. Like you said, it was easier with the Raptors. They just sent them to Florida, and it's just one team you got to worry about, and that's it. What I don't understand with some of the alignment, and I haven't fully seen the Monsters alignment yet, but with the case of the Blue Jackets, so this division they're in, you've got them in there with the Panthers, with the Lightning, and with the Stars, and
Carolina.
As
well as Chicago, Detroit, and Nashville.
Now, regionally, that makes sense. Nashville's not all that far. Chicago's a hop, skip, and a jump away, and Detroit's even closer than that. So the Dallas and the Tampa and the Florida. I mean, Florida, the Panthers are in South Florida. So that made no sense at all as far as like trying to minimize travel and do things like that. And the other thing I really don't understand right now, some of these teams, like I was watching the Coyotes the other day. Okay, so
I have
for
a
those
thought on the Coyotes, but I'll let you finish.
yeah, there's fans at the game. Not much, it's not like they're gonna turn a profit or anything off of the few people that were there. But with some of these cases, like the Panthers are allowed some fans. The Stars haven't even played a game yet. So everybody else in their division has got like at least three, if not four games under their belt. I don't know what's going on with the Stars. I think they have some kind of COVID infections going on some of the roster.
Yeah, I think you're right on that.
But, it's like, what is to be accomplished with this realignment and all of this traveling if you can't have fans? And that same question can be posed for the NBA as well. Like, hey, you've got 2,000 fans at a game. I don't know, pick a team. It's like, what's the point? What is that going to accomplish? That money does almost absolutely nothing. Now, the NBA is in a lot better financial shape because they've got that massive TV revenue. You've got the deals with like TNT and other channels, and the NHL doesn't have that, So I don't fully understand that alignment. I understand your frustration as a ticket holder. You only get to see these teams. At the end of the day, from my standpoint, if I'm a season ticket holder, I'd be glad I would just get to go to see live professional hockey.
Oh, yeah, I share your sentiment there. It just frustrates me that we only get to see like the Monsters play Chicago, Grand Rapids, Iowa, Texas, and Rockford. That's all I'm saying.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, and who knows what's going to happen if either league is going to be able to make it through the season. That goes for the NBA too. It's like I just noticed before we got on this meeting, Carolina and the Florida Panthers were supposed to have a series matchup this week. That's been postponed. You've got 5 guys on the Hurricanes that tested positive for COVID-19.
Right. Their second game against the Nashville Predators also got postponed.
Right. So the bubble, when they did the bubble last year, in both them and the NBA, it worked. You had I don't know if in the NBA, I know in the NHL, 0 cases of COVID-19 when they were in the bubble.
Same with the NBA.
Okay. And see, I know like from a player standpoint, it stinks, right? You're stuck in your hotel room and then you go to the game and you do your thing. It gets boring. My thing is you are still doing a job you absolutely love. You're playing a sport for a living and you're compensated extremely well for that, right?
Correct.
Even if you're making only 6 figures a year for your duties, but still,
yeah.
I mean, it worked out much better. And I don't know, if you can't have more than 1,000 people at a game, what's the point, really?
Yeah. I'm just looking up the history of the St. Louis Blues because I want to make sure I was telling you the right information before. But my thought on the Arizona Coyotes is this. I think in 3 to 5 years, they will no longer be the Arizona Coyotes.
Agreed.
I think they're going to move to Houston.
Yeah, and that's and any league doesn't like to see teams moving because it shows instability for the league. It's not a good sign. But there comes a point when it's like, look, you got to let them go. I know this has been going on with the Sacramento Kings in the NBA for years. Those guys wanted to move to Seattle since the Supersonics had been long gone. The Kings wanted to move up there. Sacramento is kind of like purgatory in the NBA. It's where careers go to just dissipate. But the league did not allow the owners to move there. And the same thing went in the NHL is going on right now. Gary Bettman and the Board of Governors, I'm sure, are not allowing the Coyotes to move. But there comes a point where it's like, if I own the Coyotes, it's still a business at the end of the day. You don't go into business to lose money. So at some point you're going to be like, look, guys, something's got to give here. I'm not going to sit here and keep losing millions every year. And somebody made a joke to me the other day, and it was hilarious, but it's true. It's like, oh, the Coyotes are only allowed to have 2,000 fans at their games because of COVID. And this person said, well, their game looks the same as any other attended game. Yeah, I mean, it's very possible. The Sharks are another situation, and you and I talked about that.
Happened with that Google situation at all?
It's incredibly unique. And just to bring people up to speed, Google has been buying massive chunks of land in downtown San Jose.
Right by the SAP Center where the Sharks play, also known as the Shark Tank.
Right. And you've got all this construction planned for the future. And just to give everybody an idea, this is not like, hey, in 2 years, this will all be done. There are some projections putting this construction out, and it's streets, buildings, etc. This construction going out possibly up to 10 years. So you've got a decade's worth of construction. And what Google's looking to do in this realignment of roads and everything, it takes traffic away from the SAP Center where the Sharks play. So if you can't make it an easy in or out to the team's venue, the team's not going to be able to draw. No. So that's another issue. And San Jose is looking at maybe Houston as a possible landing point. So, it's like if the Coyotes aren't going to be able to move to Houston, I'm sure the Sharks got their eyes set on that right now. So I would love to see the Sharks stay. They've built up a great fan base over the years. They've been there for quite a while now.
To go into the Shark Tank and come away with a victory.
Yeah. So it's unfortunate to see. Usually it's like a team or a league gets to dictate these things as the way it should be. The fact that some outside company that has absolutely zero interest in the sport is effectively determining if that team's going to stay there. It's really unfortunate. It's frustrating. It's angering. It shouldn't be.
Right. Okay. So I did find the history of the St. Louis Blues. This is coming from Wikipedia, so take it with a grain of salt.
Okay.
But it says St. Louis was the last of the 6 expansion teams to gain entry into the league. The market was chosen over Baltimore at the insistence of the Chicago Blackhawks. The Blackhawks owners, James D. Norris and Arthur Wirtz, also owned the decrepit St. Louis Arena. I think it was also called the Checker Dome at that time. Okay. They sought to unload the arena, which had not been well maintained since the 1940s, and thus pressed the NHL to give the franchise to St. Louis, which had not submitted a formal expansion bid. So that's kind of the history of the St. Louis Blues and where they came from. That's what I was trying to explain to you before. So I just did a video talking about like the possibility of the Coyotes moving to Houston and stuff. And, you have the Rockets, you have the Astros, or as I call them now, the Houston Asterix, after the 2017 World Series.
Right.
But based off of like the outer space theme and all that, if the Coyotes or the Sharks were to move to Houston, I said they should be called the Houston Commanders. Because I think Central Control is in Houston, if I remember correctly.
Not a bad name. You know what I wouldn't be opposed to? When you had the IHL still around, the International Hockey League, which was another league that actually competed with the AHL as far as talent. You had the Cleveland Lumberjacks in that league. You had the Houston Aeros. And
they were in the AHL for a little while too.
Yeah, and they had a great logo. You had like an old World War II bomber with the shark face nose art on the plane, and just great colors, the green and the blue, and it was just a great aviation theme that fit with the whole Houston motif. And I don't know how the licensing would go, but that could be a great idea as well.
Yeah, I actually saw the Monsters play the Houston Aeros a while back when they were still called the Lake Erie Monsters.
Which was a far better name. It flowed much better. I understand why they did it for marketing purposes, because visiting teams, like fans in those areas, did not know where the Monsters were from. They thought they were from like Erie, Pennsylvania or something to that effect. That name, I thought the name was much more organic. It sounded far better than the Cleveland Monsters, but I don't get paid enough to make those decisions. That's out of my grasp, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. I feel the same way. The other thing that bothered me about the name change is they did it the year after they won the championship. I'm like, really?
Well, those wheels were set in motion the summer before, at least the summer before their championship season started. So by the time that one, because I remember John Davidson, who was with the Blue Jackets at the time, he's now with the front office of the Rangers. He had said in a ceremony that this was totally not intended to like just do based on them winning. He's like, the fact that they won, what are you going to do? So, it is what it is. I'm not any less of a fan. I do like the name less, but I still think we got the best logo in the AHL, and now we have a really cool nickname.
Yeah. I think that actually happened with the Manchester Monarchs the year before when they won the Calder Cup. I think they moved to Ontario, California, and became the Ontario Reign. And then the Manchester Monarchs came back in a lower level at hockey league, like the ECHL, something like that.
Okay. Yeah, they had a cool logo too. They had the lion head with the crown on it, and then they went to the Reign, the REIGN.
Yep, they pretty much used the old Kings logo.
Yeah, terrible name, terrible logo. The whole thing was just bad marketing.
Yeah. I don't like the King's goal horn. I don't like that train horn. You?
No, you know what logo of theirs I liked, and it was short-lived. It was actually, I think it was around when the Blue Jackets first came into the league in 2000. They adopted purple as a color of theirs. So it was purple, black, and silver. And their logo was like a royal crest, like a shield. And you had two rampant lions standing upright, holding hockey sticks like this, and one mirroring the other. And it was a really cool logo, and the colors look great. And then they dropped that, and now what they've gone to is like, I don't know, it's bad.
Yeah.
Unimaginative, blah, bad, ugly.
Yeah. It is what it is. I'm still trying to figure out what a flyer is, because the Flyers logo, I don't know what it is. Is it supposed to be like a airplane wing? Are those supposed to be feathers? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's some kind of wing. I guess, I don't know. I kind of always took it more like a pilot kind of thing, but yeah, I don't know. So just a thought here. If we could talk about the Blue Jackets for a little bit and their current state, they've got a lot going on, and it's not good. It's not a lot going on. Pierre-Luc Dubois, who was their first-round draft pick from a few years ago, he's been in the NHL for 3 years now. He was actually predicted to go lower in the draft. He was taken higher, and the Blue Jackets general manager, Jarmo Kekalainen, who picked him, proved everybody wrong by taking him as high as he did, because he's been a rock star. He's got like 66 goals in 3 seasons, and he's a big guy. He's like 6'3", 200 some pounds. He has that type of size that is not only hard to come by in the league, but the Blue Jackets have been struggling to get somebody in that size. And now that they've got him, he signed a 2-year, $10 million deal on New Year's Eve. And thank God, right? So the guys, he's here. He's going to stay here 2 more years. Seemed a little reluctant to do it, but he's here. And it wasn't but a few days after that, I want to trade. So I'd have to imagine. I've never played professional hockey, but if I did, I'd have to imagine like I'm going to look at that guy a little differently if he's on my team and he says he wants out. It's like you're my teammate, but you don't want to be my teammate. And I know it's not that black and white, but that's part of it. So that's an issue. Again, the Blue Jackets are like they're 3 games into the season. They've got 1 win, 1 loss, 1 overtime loss. And I'm sorry, they're 4 games in. They've got two regulation losses and one overtime loss, which came last night against Detroit. Their offense is pitiful.
Yep.
And I want to get your thoughts on this in a second.
Okay.
A lot of people are pointing the finger at John Tortorella. He has a very abrasive style. I get it. It's very drill instructor like, but he gets results with it. He has a Stanley Cup to his name. But you have to wonder, like, and here's an argument. 30 plus years ago, that style worked with players, with guys that were in their 20s. Doesn't work anymore. And I'm not saying that's my opinion. These are the opinions of people that could be quite valid, that, opinions I've come across. Is it time for Tortorella to go? He's been here like 6 years in Columbus, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
So, is that an issue? You've got Artemi Panarin, who was arguably one of the greatest offensive players to ever play in the city. He left. Sergei Bobrovsky, great goalie. He left. Pierre-Luc Dubois, he's going to be gone soon.
Matt Duchene.
Yeah, Matt Duchene, right. Although I did hear Matt Duchene's wife really wanted to live in Nashville, which is the reason why he ended up with the Predators. He got offered more money by the Blue Jackets. I don't know how true that is. It sounds like there is some weight to that. So, hey, if his wife wanted to go down there, I don't think anything would have changed his mind to stay here. But yeah, you have to wonder, is it Tortorella's style that's pushing people away? I've noticed like Columbus isn't exactly that hot spot like Tampa or Chicago where guys want to go there. The guys from what I've noticed, the guys that want to stay in Columbus are the guys that have got families, they've got little kids, they want to settle down and call a place home, right? You got great school systems down there, so on and so forth, great place to raise a family. Is that a reason why these younger single guys, these hotshot scorers and all that want out? It's not their kind of surroundings. I don't know. What do you think?
I think a big part of it is what you were saying about Tortorella's style. Like, some guys are here, like Seth Jones and Zach Werenski, Cam Atkinson. They seem to be able to handle Tortorella's style. Maybe it's because they've been with Columbus for so long that they've just kind of gotten used to it. Whereas, like, Panarin, he didn't start with Columbus. So he wasn't very familiar with Tortorella. Or same thing with, well, I guess I can't use the same argument for Dubois because we drafted him. But he's only been in the league, as you said, for 3 years. So maybe he hasn't quite gotten used to Tortorella's style.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. And, this whole thing comes down to is like the Blue Jackets power play has been abysmal for years now. Their offense, it stinks. It's like, come on, guys, you're playing Detroit. Detroit is not that good of a team. And that's not a knock against Detroit. It's the reality. It's like they're just not that great. They haven't been
good since the early 2000s, I would say.
There should be no reason why the Blue Jackets can't hang 4 goals on them. There should be no reason why they can't hang 3 goals against them regularly.
You're right.
Like, right now, the Blue Jackets, you've got 31 teams in the league. The Blue Jackets rank 23rd in goals scored. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Their power play is like 25th in the league before today. It's just awful. And it's like, what is going on? And I'll tell you this. When I watched the game the other day against Detroit, when they won, that Columbus team looks so clumsy. You've got guys bunching up, tripping out, not literally, but it's almost like they're tripping over each other. Why do you see two Blue Jackets players literally elbow to elbow? There's no reason why you should be on top of one another like that. Meanwhile, I watched Carolina the other night play Nashville, and Carolina, wow, they were fun to watch. They looked like a well-oiled machine. They were so smooth, and I know they lost the other night to Nashville, but they looked so smooth against that team. And even when they lost, it's like, man, and that's another thing, the Blue Jackets passing is really suspect sometimes.
Yeah.
And these guys looked in the Blue Jackets like, I know there's some new players on the team. The whole team isn't new. There's no reason why chemistry should be, well, again, this could be related to Dubois wanting out, but there should be no reason why chemistry is this disrupted on the ice for these guys. It's just bad. It's bad. It's clumsy. It's ugly. They look like a minor league team at times. It's just very dysfunctional.
Yeah. On the subject of minor league, just getting back to that for a second, I wondered how that's going to work if, like, because for a lot of these Canadian teams, their minor league teams are over here in America. So, and you have the Canadian border shut down. So I just wonder what's going to happen if, like, the Edmonton Oilers want to call up a player from the Bakersfield Condors. Like, how I want to know how that type of situation would work.
Honestly, I think, and don't quote me on this, I don't know the Canadian regulations right now and how they're handling COVID. Number one, there's the whole border issue. Can you even cross? If you can, I'm certain there's got to be some type of quarantine initiative. 2 weeks, I would assume at least. But yeah, I mean, it's a great question. What happens in those situations? It's like you got to pull from somewhere. Now, with that being said, the NHL did establish taxi squads for this season. So, and there are a number of asterisks with these taxi squads and stipulations. It's like, to be on this, you've got to have this and this and this, but not this, but you got to have this, and it goes on and on. And we're not going to get into all of that, but that's basically it's kind of like the equivalent of a practice squad in the NFL. But the taxi squad is moving with the team, so they can pull these guys if need be and drop them in the roster at a moment's notice. So there's that. But hey, it's a contact sport. What happens if you pull from the taxi squad and the taxi squad guy gets injured? Now you've got to fill that spot. So now you do need to pull from the AHL.
Yeah, like for the Blue Jackets, it's easy because the Monsters are right up the road. But again, like the Vancouver Canucks, their affiliate is all the way in Utica, New York. So what do you do?
Yeah.
It's funny to me that you have these Canadian teams, and instead of their affiliate or their AHL team being in Canada, they're over here in America. And I'm like, what? It's just funny to me.
Yeah, the only thing I could think of with that is, I mean, you've got a much higher population in the States than you do in Canada. It's
probably right.
Much more concentration and, here, which allows those minor league teams to be here. I don't know if you'd be able to sustain the NHL teams there and their AHL counterparts at the same time.
Yeah. I know the Marlies are like literally right down the road from the Maple Leafs. Like, I think when I drove into Toronto, I actually saw the Marlies arena.
Okay.
Last time I was there. Yeah, and the Manitoba Moose play at the same arena as the Winnipeg Jets. And then you have the Laval Rocket. But those are the only three teams, I think, that are in Canada as to be with their affiliate.
Mm-hmm.
And just so everybody knows, the Laval Rocket got their name from Rocket Richard, who is one of the most famous players in the NHL, and he played a majority, if not all of his career for the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, he was an incredible offensive threat back in the day.
Yep. He passed away last season, I believe it was.
Either last season or one before.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So the Blue Jackets' next game is against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And we know the history of the playoff matchups between the Lightning and the Blue Jackets. You know, you had the 5 overtime game last year. And then the season before that, we swept them. So do you feel like there's a rivalry brewing between the Blue Jackets and the Lightning, or are we not quite at the rivalry point yet?
You know, I think that's a great question. I think there was one mounting there. So you had 2 playoffs ago. You know, the Blue Jackets swept them. They won their first ever NHL playoff series and did it in incredible fashion. They sweep the Lightning first round. Then last year, the Blue Jackets get bumped out in a hard-fought series. So I think that rivalry was shaping. Here's where I think it's going to dissolve like that. And It's the same reason why, if I can borrow from the NFL, why the Browns-Steelers rivalry didn't exist for a number of years, because the Browns were terrible. So it's like, well, if you're so dominant like the Steelers and you're playing this bottom feeder like what the Browns looked like for a number of years, there's no rivalry. It's no contest. You know, the Browns couldn't compete. So it's like, where's the rivalry? It's like the decision was almost already made before the teams went out on the field. And I think that's where the rivalry is going to dissolve between the Blue Jackets and the Lightning. Is the Lightning look absolutely beastly this season.
They do.
Even with Kucherov out there, you know, arguably their best scorer, their best offensive threat, even with him out, they still look tough. And they had to shave some money off their salary this year. And
right. They traded for their better goal scorers, I think, to Ottawa, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and they still look good, you know? And it's like, meanwhile, the Blue Jackets have, for the most part, a largely intact roster from what they did last year. And here they're coming into the season and they're tripping and falling and they can't complete a pass and they're bunching up in the corners. And it's like, what are you guys doing? You don't look fluid at all. And based on that, they better tighten up quick, because the minute they get destroyed by Tampa, no, there's no rivalry. You know, it's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. There's no rivalry then. There could be, if the Blue Jackets can get it together and, you know, and put something out there, rather than this just like, hey, we scored another 1 goal this game. We made it to 2 goals. Go out there and you got to put something together, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I was upset that the Blue Jackets had to move divisions. I loved playing in the Metropolitan Division because you get games against the Rangers, the Islanders, Capitals, Penguins, Hurricanes. Forget the Devils. They're just there.
Although I'll say this, the rookie Jack Hughes, he's looking good.
He is. But the Devils have been, for the most part, meh.
Yeah, they've been on the slide for a number of years, but they're finding their way back.
Yeah, but like Columbus had a number of rivalries in the Metropolitan Division. You could say there was a rivalry between them and Washington. There's a rivalry certainly between Columbus and Pittsburgh.
Absolutely.
Even though the Penguins have bounced them out of the playoffs every time they've met. As a Blue Jackets fan, I hate the New York Rangers. I would actually say the blue shirts, as I'll call them, are the team I hate the most in all of the Metropolitan Division, because they're just kind of I feel like and maybe you see it differently, but I just feel like the Rangers are kind of arrogant. Like they walk around like, oh, we're the New York Rangers. We play in the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, you haven't done anything since 1994.
Yeah. Although I will say, I don't know. I wouldn't say they're arrogant. They're definitely going to be finding their way this season. They got a lot of young players on that team. You know, they had the first overall pick with Alex Lafreniere. And he's really not, I don't want to, somebody online said he's a bust. Come on, guys. We're not even half a dozen games into the season. You can't put that label on the kid yet.
No.
You know, and we'll see what he does. But as far as like so far, 3-4 games into the season, he hasn't done anything really. But give him time. Despite, you know, you've got a shortened training camp, you've got a lot of new guys to the league. Give them time to gel, and you've got Panarin there. Once they can get a feel for each other's presence without looking to where the other guy is on the ice, with that speed and that kind of offensive talent, I mean, the Rangers could be dangerous in another season or two.
Don't forget, I think it's Capo Caco, if I remember correctly. He's coming on the scene quite quickly.
Now, so, and then we'll see, you know, I think right now goaltending may be an issue there.
Yeah.
I watched them in the opener against the Islanders, and wow, the Rangers just looked lost. They looked lost. But again, it's to be expected. I mean, it doesn't mean they're a bad team. You know, it means they're just trying to find their way. Whereas like the Blue Jackets, where you got a lot of guys who have played together for a while, they are not looking like a good team. So
maybe Tortorella has run his course.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't want to, I'm not saying it's him. I like him. Me personally, my style, I would respond to his coaching style. I respect that. Whether other guys do is the question, though. I'm not the one on the team. The other thing that I think is wrong with the Blue Jackets, and I think this is an issue, there are, and I understand, again, this goes back to being Columbus, small market. It's hard to attract big names to play there. You need to do better building that roster than what's there. You have talented players on there. Don't get me wrong, Oliver Bjorkstrand, he is a first-line winger. But you've got a lot of guys on that team who are a lot of third and second liners is what they really are. And they're maybe playing in positions that are a little bit more promoted than where they would be in any other team.
Right.
And again, that's not a slight. That's the reality. That's where we're at. So you can't have these guys that's like, hey, we've got a lot of guys that score 15 goals a season. You can't have that as your first line guy, your second line guy. You know, you need guys that are out there. Your second line guy should be scoring, 20 goals.
At least.
Yes. You can't keep having this like, we're a great defensive team. Well, that's fine. But, it's like where defense wins in football, offense wins in hockey.
Yeah.
So you need to get that out there. You need guys that can put the puck in the net. And, it's like I heard from the guy that calls the Blue Jackets games on the radio down there. His take on it, not saying this is for sure, but his take on it was like, look, I think that they may get a little too fancy on the power play sometimes, and they're just trying to go off the reservation and be a little too good. And those aren't his words verbatim, but it's like, yeah, just try to open up a lane on a power play and get the puck passed instead of trying to, pass here and pass there. For God's sake, take the shot. Just take the shot already and take a good shot. Don't put it right in the breadbasket of the goalie. Don't aim for his logo, and I'm not saying, again, that's the issue, but from a fan's perspective, that's certainly what it looks like a lot of the time.
Yeah. I actually heard this on NHL Network. Goalies are taught to go into the butterfly stance or when they're trying to make a save. So if you can just get the puck up and over them, you've got an easy goal.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of goalies that play from their, they play from their pads, they to take out that low shot, and defend the corners and so forth. But I don't know. It's like, come on, guys, you're in the NHL, and one of the things, and he's a great personality, great guy, Cam Atkinson. He needs to do a whole lot more offensively. He had a 40-plus goal season the one year, but he had Artemi Panarin as a winger. So Panarin's setting him up. And now that he's gone, it's like, I mean, come on, it can't be that one guy was the reason why you had 40 goals. That
Right.
can't be.
No.
I mean, you've got to do something on your own here. And I don't want to say on your own, but it's like, you got to make something work here.
Right.
So you can't, he now, like, he just looks like he's silent out there. It's like, come on, man, you can't go from 40 goals to like a baker's dozen. It can't work that way.
No, it can't. Yeah, I don't know what to make of this Blue Jackets team. Like, we know Tampa is going to get to the playoffs. They're going to win this division.
Yep.
After that, though, I'm not sure what to expect from Dallas. Like, was last year's appearance in the Cup final a fluke for them? Are they actually that good of a team? Don't know. Carolina, I think, is a shoo-in for the playoffs. But then after that, you had the Panthers, you had the Blue Jackets, you had the Red Wings, you had the Blackhawks. I'm sorry. The Blue Jackets might just, by the luck of the draw, might just be able to get in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Not that they necessarily deserve it, though.
I don't think Florida they're showing signs of improvement because they've been in, statistic limbo for a number of years. The Blackhawks, and don't get me, I am a Blackhawks fan, don't get me wrong, but it's like the Blackhawks are setting themselves up for a high draft pick. And that's not to say they're doing that on purpose. That is just their roster.
And they're loaded with injuries right now.
Yeah, like Jonathan Taves, their captain, who knows when he's coming back. He's not injured, but he's got some type of physical ailment. He's been battling like lethargy in the off season. He has no energy. This is going on for some months now, trying to figure out what that is. So that's an issue. You've got a defense that's just leaves their goalies hanging out to dry. You got a young goalie with talent in Colin Delia, and he just got hung out to dry a few times the other night. So that team is really not a threat. I mean, that's not to say, don't take them seriously when you play them, but outside of Patrick Kane, Kirby Dach, the Blackhawks #1 pick from the recent draft.
I think he's also good.
Yeah, he's good, but he broke his wrist in the juniors the other week. So, when the World Juniors was going on a few weeks ago. So he's out indefinitely. So I don't know. It's like the Blackhawks aren't going to do anything. They're not going to make the playoffs. Honestly, and again, I know we're only a handful of games into this season. I do not see the Blue Jackets going to the playoffs if this is how they're going to play all season. And you got to figure, too, it's like people are like, listen, don't hit the panic button. Right, I agree. Don't hit the panic button. But you have a season that's nearly 30 games shorter than what a normal season is this year. So you've taken 20-some games off the schedule. There is not time to screw around. You cannot fall asleep on this. You guys have got to get it together right now. That goes for any team, So it's like the clock is ticking, and it's ticking fast. And before you know it, this season's going to be over.
Right. I've seen videos about this. So Seattle's going to be in the expansion draft next year. And, of course, they'll be drafting from everybody. But I guess because Vegas is under the 5-year mark, they're exempt from the expansion draft. So
really?
yeah,
I did not know that.
I believe I believe it's somewhere around the 5-year mark.
Yeah, because their first year was the 17-18 season. So, and I found out something interesting today because I had been worried about, again, going back to the Blue Jackets having an incredible goalie tandem. Each team is allowed to protect only one goalie. So who do the Blue Jackets keep? Joonas Korpisalo or Elvis Merzlikins? Well, I had found out today there's a stipulation because of if a player has played so many games and if they have a no trade clause and so on, and not that Elvis has a no trade clause, I don't think he does, but he's got 1 full season under his belt. He is actually exempt from the expansion draft. So the Blue Jackets do not have to protect him, and he still cannot be picked up by Seattle. So that makes it easy then as the Blue Jackets GM. You protect Korpisalo, and nobody's going to go after Kiv Lennox on the Monsters. He's not that he's a good goalie, but there are plenty of other better goalies out there in the NHL right now who I'm sure Seattle has their eye on.
Yeah. So Seattle's coming in, and obviously they're going to be in the Pacific Division, which means Arizona is moving to the Central Division, which I think makes sense because, again, I think they're going to move to Houston in 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good estimation, I would say. That's a good point. Again, as like the NHL is, they're going to look at that and be like, hey, we're in a market where we're just losing money terribly. You can only hemorrhage finances for so long before it's like, hey, time to move.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised Kansas City doesn't have an NHL team. I know they had the Kansas City Scouts for a while, and there was a period where it looked like the Penguins were going to have to move to Kansas City, but of course they had Mario Lemieux, bust his ass and keep the team in Pittsburgh. But I don't know. I'd like to see a team in Kansas City again.
Yeah, and they had the Kansas City Blades also in the IHL. And now that that's gone, that may not be a bad testing ground to see if there's a call there for fans. Now, granted, as long as COVID is going on, and who knows, the way I see it, it's like COVID-19 is not going to be eradicated. Now we have all this talk of new strains forming and showing up, which is like, hey, that's part of nature. That's what nature does. It finds a way to survive. So it may just have to be a part of our everyday life from this point forward. So
hopefully that doesn't mean we have to wear masks for the rest of our lives, though.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, maybe it does. I don't know. I hope not. I just want to go to a concert again. But yeah, I mean, that aside, it's like, so we're not going to be able to test and see, hey, is Kansas City a good market for an NHL team? Because the way the NHL did that in the past is put neutral zone games there. They did it in Cleveland. I went to one here when it was Buffalo and Tampa. To get a feel for like, hey, what does that draw when you put 2 NHL teams there? What kind of draw is it? Well, it wasn't significant. So, what do you do then with Kansas City? How do you determine that? Well, maybe you wait your 3 to 5 years, when hopefully this virus clears up and you go there and then you can see, hey, does this work? Can we put an NHL team here? So yeah, I think 3 to 5 years, maybe going on the longer end of that spectrum to see if it's going to be a fit.
And then to finish this off, Atlanta has had 2 cracks at having an NHL team. We had the Atlanta Flames, and then you had the Thrashers. Interestingly, both times that Atlanta team packed up and moved to Canada, because the Atlanta Flames became the Calgary Flames, which created the Battle of Alberta, which is one of the best rivalries in the NHL, I would say.
Yep.
Although my favorite rivalry is St. Louis, Chicago, for obvious reasons. I would also include Pittsburgh and Philadelphia in there. But I'm surprised Atlanta can't hold an NHL team. When you got cities like Pittsburgh, or not Pittsburgh, Raleigh with the Carolina Hurricanes, Tampa Bay, Florida with the Panthers. They're in like Sunrise, which is like just outside of Fort Lauderdale or something. Arizona. I would even throw like San Jose in there for that matter.
Yeah, I think it's a demographic. I mean, I had gone to a Thrashers game at Phillips Arena when they were around, and they drew very modestly. It was not a packed arena, and the fact, like you mentioned, the fact that they've had 2 cracks at an NHL team, there is no third try. That's it. They don't deserve it. I just think that demographic, they just do not. They can't hold the sport there. It's just not for them. They like their football, their basketball, their baseball, but hey, I guess hockey's not on the agenda for them, and it is what it is. So, and the same thing is like in Cleveland. It's like we talked about this. Cleveland is not exactly a hockey hotbed. You've got some great hockey high schools around here, but outside of that, then it's like it just kind of fades away.
Yeah. And again, as I said during that discussion, I'm not necessarily trying to advocate for Cleveland getting an NHL team, because what would you do with the Monsters then?
Right.
But I just wanted to throw the idea around and, see what would happen.
Yeah.
But I'm actually going to disagree with you. I'd actually like to see Atlanta get a third try at having an NHL team and just see what happens. Because, again, the Florida Panthers, they don't get great attendance, but they're still around. The Tampa Bay Lightning, excuse me, they're still around, and I don't know if they get great attendance or not. Carolina, they have decent attendance, but they're still around. So I don't know why Atlanta's just not working.
Well, the problem with the notion of just try it is it costs hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars.
That's true.
To establish a team. So nobody really wants to, no matter how wealthy somebody is, you're not going to do, even Bill Gates isn't going to be like, if he had an interest in sports, wouldn't be like, let's just try it. I mean, it'd be a hell of a tax write-off, but yeah, we're not going to see that again in our lifetimes, I don't think.
Yeah. I love talking about hockey and expansion talk of like, why does this city have a team, but this city doesn't? Like I'd like to see Pittsburgh get an NBA team.
I do like your mention of Kansas City, though, with the NHL concept. That is very thought-provoking. I would think there's a lot of potential there. I mean, you figure they've got baseball and football. And for baseball, it's the smallest stadium in the entire MLB. And they just drew, they just won a World Series not that long ago. So you've got a good fan base there. Why not bring a hockey team there? It seems like, to me, they probably could support it. Who knows?
Instant rivalry with the St. Louis Blues.
Yep, absolutely.
Although the NHL, I think part of the reason the NHL put a team in Vegas is because they wanted to create that rivalry with Arizona, and instead Vegas has developed a rivalry with San Jose.
Yeah.
So
and what helps with that too a lot is meeting in the playoffs.
Oh, you're talking about that controversial Game 7 call.
Well, that's part of it. That'll certainly throw gas on the fire in a rivalry. But just the fact that they've met up a few times in the playoffs is a good catalyst for that.
Yep. And I'm pretty sure Vegas fired Gerard Gallant and hired San Jose's coach, who they fired, Peter DeBoer. So there's that.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I never did understand the firing of Gallant.
I didn't either.
There had to have been something going on behind the scenes that fans weren't privy to. But his dismissal just had like a big question mark hanging on it, especially after he leads them to the Stanley Cup Finals in their first year of existence.
Yeah. I think that's also because of how well they did in the expansion draft, which we'll see if the NHL allows Seattle to do the same thing.
Yeah, time will tell. We'll see this summer.
Yep. I'm excited for the Kraken to come into the league. I wonder what type of like road trips Eastern Conference teams will do with Seattle. Like they would probably do Vancouver and Seattle on the same trip, I would think.
Oh yeah, you definitely want to, kill two birds with one stone, so to speak, and knock that out and make the travel as efficient as possible.
Maybe you could do like a San Jose, like a Anaheim, San Jose, Seattle, Vancouver road trip type thing.
Yeah, sure. Knock all of them out. Yeah.
Sorry, LA Kings, but
Nobody cares about you right now.
Yeah, the California teams pretty much suck. So, what are you going to do?
Yep. Hey, they had their day in the sun.
Yeah. So I think that's just about time to wrap it up. So hopefully you enjoyed this as much as I did.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Yep. Next time I'm going to try and get more people on to discuss more hockey topics. Who knows? Maybe we'll cover some of the same ones we did in this show. But, thank you for tuning in. And if you like this video, punch that like button like a UFC fighter and punch that subscribe button. Until next time, I'm UngarToTheMax signing off, and I'll see you on another episode of the Sports Room. Peace.